May 8th, 2019. Would the council members please introduce themselves, starting from my left?
Jan Haggerty.
Tamar Powell.
Glenn Harrison.
Claire Touton.
Dave Olson.
And Barbara Mathewson.
Michelle Weil would not be here tonight. First, the Board of Supervisors report. Ellie?
All right. Good evening, Midcoast Community Council and community members. My name is Ellie Dahlman, and I'm here on behalf of San Mateo County Supervisor Don Horsley to provide a few updates. Today I have 4 items. The first is, I think, something that I've mentioned before, but San Mateo County is excited to announce upcoming opportunities to provide input on the unincorporated San Mateo County Active Transportation Plan. So this is actually the first active transportation plan that the county will have in place, and the planning stages are commencing this month, and the plan will help define priorities for walking and biking improvements, specifically in unincorporated areas of the county. More information, including a timeline and project information, is online at walkbikesmc.org. So I encourage you to visit the website and learn more about the project. And there's going to be a variety of ways to get involved and share input by visiting the project website, that I already mentioned. There's also an interactive map through that project website where you can identify specific roadways and intersections in unincorporated San Mateo County and mention the improvements that you'd like to see as it relates to active transportation, which would be bicycle or pedestrian. So you can also sign up for future updates, and feel free to email me if you're interested in more info, and I can send you the web links. The second item I have for you is just to remind you that the San Mateo County Youth Commission call for applicants is open for the 2019-2020 term. The Youth Commission offers young people the opportunity to give their perspective on important issues facing their community and to work directly with the Board of Supervisors, county departments, and other county staff as leaders and as a voice for youth in our county. And the commission engages in policy analysis, recommendations, skill building, leadership development, etc. So if any of you on the council or in the community know of anyone that would be interested, please let me know. You can also find the information on the county website as well. And one last thing about the Youth Commission, they have an annual showcase happening on Thursday, May 23rd at 5:45 p.m. in the Board of Supervisors chambers, where they will present on their accomplishments, present the Immigrant Youth Award, and they will also be commemorating the 25th anniversary of the commission, which is really exciting. So we'd love to see you there if you're available. The third item I have for you is just to let you know, in case you haven't heard, that the Half Moon Bay Library is actually receiving another award. The American Association of Architects partners with American Library Association to honor the best in library architecture and design. And winners were recently announced, and it's really exciting that the new Half Moon Bay Library was one of the 6 libraries that will be recognized for excellence in architectural design. So really congratulations to everyone involved. The county played a key role, and as well as the city of Half Moon Bay. It was a really incredible team effort and great partnership between city, county, library, and many others in the community. And then the last and fourth item is just to let you know that related to the Parallel Trail, which you've all heard of, it's a bicycle and pedestrian multimodal trail that the county is in the design phase for, that will be located in the Caltrans right-of-way directly east of Highway 1, and it will start, this first segment that we're proposing will start right at the northern city of Half Moon Bay border and stretch all the way north to Coronado intersection. And we will be pursuing grant funds for the construction phase through a call for projects that CCAG will be releasing on May 15th. So we have come before you in the past to request a letter of support for that grant and for other grants. And so it is very likely that we'll be coming back before you if we're not able to use the same support letter that we received from you a couple years ago. So just a heads up for that. We recently submitted the permit application package, and you may have recently seen people out in the area where the trail will be constructed, surveying. They're just making sure that the final design is not in conflict with any utilities in the area, especially with the somewhat newly relocated sewer force main. We want to make sure we are not in conflict with that when we're installing this trail. So, and then construction will commence next year. Happy to take any questions or comments that the council has.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ellie, for your report. The community has called the 30 Cafe an icon of the coast for 25 years. And they have recently made many testimonials to their love of this place and have made many small donations to see that it returns. I understand that Supervisor Horsley and yourself were aware that the acting manager wanted to continue the business, and they want a fair opportunity to see that they can bring it back to life. But there seems to be some barriers, some questionable barriers that the RFP presents, specifically requiring upgrading the county building, the septic tank.
Dan, I don't want to get too much into detail on this. Can you maybe sum?
Well, I just wanted to ask if there was anything that you could tell us that the county is doing to help see that the community can have the 30 Cafe come back into business?
I don't know of the details regarding the septic tank, but I'm happy to follow up with them and circle back and let you know.
Okay.
Were there any
Anything else?
other barriers that
Yeah, it seems like the RFP process could be more transparent. I'm a representative of this council, and I was not allowed to go to the walkthrough today, and it just seems, if the community, if I'm the person to represent the community, it seems that why am I limited to the amount of information that, the ability to meet prospective, bidders or people that are interested?
I'm happy to follow up with the airport staff with the Department of Public Works and get back to you with some more information.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ellen.
sure.
There are chairs in the back room there, some more black mesh chairs. I think we've almost filled up the room, but please grab some back there and just put them in the aisles or in another row so that everybody has a place to sit. And also, I've gotten several speaker slips, but please continue to make sure that we have them so you get a chance to speak. What is I mean, this is part of your agenda. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure they had chairs. Okay, anybody else from government bodies? Harvey? Or Chris? You want to? Okay.
When the big one strikes, it's not going to respect any city boundaries. So I'm reporting today on 3 developments which I think are positive for coastside emergency preparedness. As I said, this involves all of us, Midcoast, city, South Coast. We all are going to be isolating when the fire or the earthquake or, God forbid, the pandemic occurs. So the 3 events that I wanted to respond to today were last week, the Coastside Fire Protection District at its board meeting agreed to sponsor the local CERTs, that's the community emergency response teams, We've had a recent, very helpful change where the 26 neighborhoods that start at Devil's Slide and go all the way down to Tanitas Creek have been organized into neighborhoods with leaders and, in some cases, block leaders. And the CERTs who are in those neighborhoods are beginning to get together to realize what they can do for their community, for their families, for the rest of the neighborhood. So the sponsorship of the CERTs will allow the CERTs to be activated locally, and in addition to apply for money, which is a big deal, to help with training, with bilingual education, with recertification. So it's a really good thing, and we're really grateful for CAL FIRE and CFPD who are here, who agreed to sponsor CERTs. The second thing that is encouraging is at the last KEEP meeting, that's the Coastside Emergency Access Program, I guess. Anyway, they meet with business leaders, government leaders, individual citizens, local neighborhood groups to work on emergency preparedness. And at the last KEEP meeting, they expressed a need to have a representative from the Midcoast Community Council or Midcoast community to come. So I'm urging you to designate somebody who will come. The meetings are the first Friday of the month at 9 o'clock at the Emergency Operations Center in Half Moon Bay.
I think we actually have somebody assigned to that. You're doing that, aren't you, Barbara?
Okay, good. We're looking forward to working together. And the third development that looks really promising is on the agenda for tonight, where the Midcoast Community Council and the Half Moon Bay City Council have worked together on a joint letter to our legislators expressing concern and hope for how we can communicate better at the next emergency. So that's on the agenda. I won't speak much more about that. I'm happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chris?
Hello, my name is Chris Johnson. I'm a former member of the MCC, and I'm here tonight to speak as the liaison for the MCC to the San Mateo County Parks Dog Management Committee. So the committee meets every month, the first Monday of the month. We had a meeting just this past Monday. I want to give you the results or what came out of that meeting, some definitive things from that meeting. 2 on-leash pilots are a go. Junipero Serra and Coyote Point are the 2 parks that were chosen for on-leash dog pilots. A matrix of evaluation criteria was approved. If people are interested in this topic, I highly recommend you go and check out the minutes of this meeting. There was lack of consensus on the evaluation criteria and the nature of them, and I think it's important, if this is an important issue for you, to understand the evaluation criteria and the metrics that may come out of them. There are no metrics right now associated with that criteria, but I don't, again, I'm liaisoning for the MCC, so I don't want to color the facts with my own opinion. So please, evaluation criteria was approved. Please go check that if you're interested. Also, unfortunately, for the first time, members of the group expressed concern about the committee and its process. That relates to the evaluation criteria, in which it was asked, is this evaluation criteria being used to make adjustments and improve the program going forward, or will it be used possibly to determine whether the program will exist going forward or not, whether on-leash access will be allowed in these parks or not? And the answer was the latter. So that, for myself as a member of this committee from the very beginning of 2016, seemed like a departure from what the policy has been previously, which was to expand dog access in county parks, find a way to do it, And this evaluation criteria is apparently going to be used to decide whether to continue it or not. So, anyways, questions from the council?
I'm sorry, Enid, Sarah, what was the other part?
Coyote Point. And the important thing to know about Coyote Point, and this is where people on the committee feel really good about this committee, there was an issue with Coyote Point. There is an organization there called Curiosity that has a variety of wild animals, and some of the trails there go right up to the enclosures for those wild animals. So there was a lot of concern about how will those wild animals be affected. And in my opinion, the committee, working with county staff, effectively worked out a plan to allow greater dog access in Coyote Point to more trails and protect the animals at Curiosity. So this committee has great potential, but there are some concerns. Please go and check out the materials on the county website. Other questions? Claire?
How does this affect Quarry Park and the Pillar Point Bluffs and other local facilities?
That's a good question. So going forward, the committee is, now that we've passed evaluation criteria for the 2 on-leash sites, we are now going to move forward with selecting a site for an off-leash pilot program. And hopefully that will be decided, Ellie, June, July? We're trying to...
It's dependent on the worker.
Okay. Yeah, so...
It should be, it'll be discussed, the discussion will start at the next meeting.
Yeah, with the hope that maybe that could be enacted by July 1st. I believe the on-leash pilots are going to be active June 15th. So, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other government representatives? Ed?
Just real quick. So I'm Ed Rennes. I'm on the Harbor District Board. I just want to give you a quick update on a few projects, namely the West Trail, which is the trail that leads from the Mavericks parking lot to the Mavericks Beach. There's some areas there that we're eroding, and I just want to let you know that the district has hired environmental science associates to do the major part of the engineering for that. And where we're going with it is we're not going to put a giant rock wall to protect that trail. We're going to do something that's called a living shoreline, which will use some sand replenishment on the beach and use it as a pilot project to look and see how well that works, maybe make some adjustments in the future, and then look towards doing a little bit more of that for coastal management in the harbor, getting rid of some of the unpermitted rock armoring in some places if it works out. The other is at Surfers Beach. ESA is also taking the lead on that for the sand replenishment project on the south side of the harbor. That's moving along nicely. Very likely sand will start moving towards spring of next year. And that's it. Thanks. Yes.
Question about the Catch Joanna restaurant.
Yes.
I understand it's a lawsuit or with the bathroom, the ADA, this and that. What surprised me was that the state of California apparently closed, or they're not allowing the customers to use the bathrooms. They work fine, but they're not letting, so it just seems very odd. I've never heard of this before. It seems, a lot of small businesses across the coast side are being hurt, and it just seems like, do you know can you give us any information as to, really what's the rationale
here's what I can tell you is that the laws in California in particular, but also in the country, are very strict on ADA access, and the Harbor District is working with the owner or not the owner, but the leasee, and we are pretty much limited by what we can do about that. I can't tell you what their rationale is, but we have to follow the law on that, and there's nothing we can do. It's Harbor District. It's the way it works.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else, government rep? There are chairs in the back room there, if you want to grab some chairs and bring them in. So I think there are enough chairs for everybody out there. Okay, moving along. public comments and announcements. Please, if you want to speak in public comment about something that's not on the agenda, please give us a speaker slip. In the meantime, I'll make a few announcements. The Climate Ready SMC Coalition, which has been doing various workshops on environmental issues, is scheduled one called Turning the Tide for June 5th, which is about sea level rise. The Coastside Memorial Day Shelter in Place exercise, which you could find more about online, is scheduled for the 25th and 26th of May. And there is a first aid and CPR class sponsored by the Granada Community Services District on the 18th of May. Any comments from the community? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which is to approve the minutes for April 24th. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? 6-0. Then moving on to the regular agenda, and once again, if you have speaker slips about anything that's on the actual agenda, please get those to us as well. First item, Peggy Jensen was going to be here. She wasn't able to be here. She'll be here at a subsequent meeting. But we have Nicholas Calderon from the Parks Department, and also Rick Sampson, I guess that's okay. Update on parks issues.
Thank you. I'll let Dave get the presentation going.
Nicholas, while we're setting up, we had a late communication from Peggy that discussion of the coastal trail and its segments and the director position was going to be postponed. She was going to talk to that later. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so Peggy Jensen, who's the interim director of the San Mateo County Parks Department, at this time will be attending, I believe, one of the upcoming meetings to discuss those two matters and answer any questions that individuals have on that.
Oh, come
That's
on.
if anyone has any questions.
It remembered that I had been through this.
That was the easiest presentation I've ever given to this group.
Come on. How about that?
All right, now we're back at the beginning. Well, good evening, everyone. Nicholas Calderon, Assistant Parks Director for the San Mateo County Park Department. I was just talking with Lisa, it's been 3.5 years since I've been to this group, so it's nice to be back and good to see everyone and see new faces. So tonight, we'll really discuss kind of 4 general categories. First being the Quarry Park Master Plan, the second being fire fuel reduction effort that is being planned for Quarry Park, then other updates for this area, as well as other general park updates that we have going on system-wide. So first, Quarry Park Master Plan. The Quarry Park Master Plan is being developed to inform and guide management decisions regarding Quarry Park and how we make recreational improvements, how we manage our natural resources there, how we conduct habitat restoration, preservation projects, and what direction it is that we, by the input we receive from the public, would like to take the park. And so, while developing the Quarry Park Master Plan, there were a series of issues that were considered, and these include the review of historical documents, site assessments, sediment management, analysis of existing features, which include the recreational facilities, our trails, the play structure, the visitor serving amenities, the biological assessment, which included fire management, and as I stated earlier, the recreational uses and what direction is it that the community would like to see this park go. And as I stated earlier, right, we, the San Mateo County Parks Department, have the privilege of managing this park on behalf of the residents of San Mateo County. And so for that reason, obviously, community engagement is an extremely important part of how we develop these master plans. We held 5 community meetings between 2017 and 2018 to help this process along and to identify what type of language, what type of information, and what type of exhibits needed to be included in the master plan. At this time, the master plan is going through an internal review process at the department, and what we envision as the next steps include bringing the master plan to the MCC this summer, and then taking it to our Parks Commission in the summer or fall of 19, so this year. We would then take the draft master plan to the Board of Supervisors in the fall, and would complete an environmental review process about a year from now, so summer of 2020, before presenting the final master plan to the board in fall of 2020. So we want to make sure that we're bringing this back out to the MCC and giving residents an opportunity to see what that draft plan looks like and provide feedback both to us and to you all. So that's what we're seeing as far as the master plan and next steps. Next, based on information collected during the master plan process, as well as an assessment prepared by the state, Quarry Park was identified as a high priority for fire fuel reduction efforts. And for this reason, CAL FIRE has taken a critical leadership role in an upcoming project. And we're very fortunate to have Rich Sampson, who's the division chief out here, to answer any questions, provide information on what this project is. So at this time, I'm actually going to turn it over to Rich and let him inform you as to what it is that CAL FIRE is doing.
Good evening. Again, Rich Sampson. I'm the unit forester for San Mateo Santa Cruz unit, and I manage the vegetation management program for our unit. Back in December, CAL FIRE was asked, before the new governor came into office, we were told that we were going to be receiving an order to go ahead and come up with a 45-day directive. And that directive was, part of which was to come up with approximately 3 planned projects per unit. There's 22 units around the state. And these are projects that we felt were priority for our particular unit, and also projects that we could accomplish fairly quickly, i.e. before the end of the calendar year, this calendar year. And so my unit was able to come up with 3 projects: Quarry Park, Kings Mountain, and one in Santa Cruz and Aptos. And we were fortunate to have 3 of the 35 that were selected. And subsequently, we've been encumbered about $305,000 for this particular project, additional funding for the other 2 projects. Quarry Park project, what our plan is to work on the 500-acre project, eucalyptus stand. We're going to be working on about 100 acres of it. So we're going to try to treat about 20% of that stand. And what our intent is to create a shaded fuel break. The stand has had several projects over about the last 15 years that the community is very familiar with. Probably the most significant one was the one where they were chipping along the west boundary, working on that fuel break. We've also since had several small projects. What this project is to do essentially the same thing that these other projects have done, but try to get ahead of the curve, because they were all basically, at least in our opinion, not enough and not quick enough, because we need to get ahead of what we have out on this project. So we're going to concentrate on creating shaded fuel breaks along the main access roads within the park, and then also try to hit some more of the perimeter boundaries and create shaded fuel breaks behind some of the residences in two of the key areas along the park. We'll be looking at removing essentially all the ladder fuels and trees less than 10 inches in diameter in those shaded fuel breaks along each side of the road. There will be some larger trees that will be removed, basically ones that are impinging on the road access to get onto the areas around the park, or trees that show significant signs of degradation that need to be removed for public safety. We're working closely with county parks on this. This is their property. The key person on the county park side is the county arborist, and so he's working with my crews on the ground to finish layout on this. As part of this project, we've gone through, we back up a little bit, a lot of the talk about this project for the last couple months has been that CEQA is being waived for it, and so the perception that we've heard is that environmental review is non-existent. Quite to the contrary, we actually wish we would have gone through CEQA because it would probably have been a lot easier than the process that we're going through right now. We've had, yesterday we had Department of Fish and Wildlife out and toured the project, and they're signing off on it. Between them, several other agencies, including water quality, we have a 25-page of BMPs, best management practices, that we're going to be having to follow for all of these projects. And we're also working closely with county parks, who's working with county planning to get a CDP for this project through. Our intent is to begin this project, or get crews on the ground early June, so we can get through this during the dry period and stay out of the wet period, which are some of the endangered species that we have to deal with, some of the sensitive species that we have to deal with. The wet period is when we have to worry about them. And so we're hoping to have this completed by early October. The push is to do as much of this as possible, and if we can go to the next slide. As much of this as possible is going to be on ground where we can use equipment. A piece of equipment we call a masticator. Essentially, it's a chipper on wheels or on tracks that reaches out, grabs the material, and turns it into chips and leaves it on site. Similar to what we saw in that project about 12 years ago with that post encounter. So you can see on the photo on the left, that's one of the access roads through the stand. And that road was actually worked on in the 80s when they did the timber harvest. And essentially they cut back and clear cut it back both sides of the road about 50 feet. That's how they built those roads. We're going to go back in there and essentially take those smaller stems and masticate those and try to get keep a canopy on top, but get rid of all those ladder fields, get rid of all the small diameter material. On the right, you can see a typical road that's down below one of the residences. As you can see, it's extremely steep. Where we can get equipment in there, and preferably in this case, would be a small excavator that can actually reach out with a boom with the masticator and reach up and get as much as possible. We're going to use that. And then we'll be bringing hand crews in. In this case, it'll be contract crews to go ahead and try to clean up the rest of it and get these fuel breaks in. Again, it's going to be very ambitious to get this thing done in time, but those are the orders we've been given, and we feel that we have enough of a budget to get this work done this year. Any questions now, or?
I've got a
we can do later?
So on previous thinnings, they've marked a lot of the native bushes and small trees. And when you say everything under 10 inches probably will go, will the native bushes and trees be left if they're smaller than that?
Our intent is to try to turn this around so it goes more native as possible. Quite frankly, unless the canopy is gone, where you don't have the leaves that contain the chemicals that leach out and suppress the native material or the native plants, you're really not going to get a native stand back in. Obviously, we're not going to be able to do that in this go around. It probably will never happen in my career. But we will try to encourage those as much as possible. One thing that we did find in the project that posted, where they did a very extensive removal, about 3 months after that fuel break was completed, the leaves stopped falling down on that piece of ground. Had about a 10-inch amount of chips that were left there because nothing left the site, and that's going to be the same on this one. We're not going to pull anything off the site. All of a sudden, we noticed the natives popping up through, which we weren't even aware, or they weren't even aware we were there in the first place. And what we discovered is about a month after those leaves stopped falling on the ground, that leaching stops, and the chemical process that, and this is working with some professors in Berkeley, the chemical process stops and it releases the suppressed material that's always in there. So if we can thin this enough, we can start encouraging more native vegetation, which is much more fire resistant, much more desirable for this area.
Claire?
Yeah.
Will you be doing any controlled burns of?
No, it's, on this project, no. On other projects, we'll be doing some pile burning, but we don't intend any prescribed fire on this one. I could see in the future, if this continues, on other parts of the stand, where maybe on the edges, we might want to be able to do some pile burning, but that's not on this project.
Any other questions? Dan?
Yeah, thank you for taking action. I've been a big concern of mine for a number of years, been vocal about it. It sounds like it's a pretty good plan. I'm not a biologist, but I'm wondering if, I know that wood chips of other trees, other varieties, I should say, are pretty much free. And I'm wondering if anybody's talked about, maybe adding some other wood chips to really, I think it takes a while for all that to break down and to really help the environment, and potentially, maybe it's not necessary to plant any appropriate trees or other vegetation. Maybe it could all happen naturally. But I'm wondering if other wood chips that were added to the work might have a biological benefit and help, because I am concerned with the rapid regrowth.
Okay, so the main thing that's suppressing the native species now is, one, the denseness of the canopy, and the chemicals leaching out of the leaves that are falling. We're not going to be able to completely stop that, and so the adding additional chips of different species probably would not change that. Until you remove the whole stand, it's not going to go native completely. What we will do what we can to encourage that. The amount of material that we're going to be generating is going to be huge. I mean, they literally left a 10-inch blanket of chips when they did the 11 acres. For erosion control, it's great. For keeping the soil moisture and the fuel moisture up with the fog that we get, that's perfect. That's what we want. If this was the Sierras, we would not want that because it would dry out, and that would be very conducive fuel we wouldn't want that in a fuel break. In this case, we'll use that while we can. We would probably be very happy with maybe 2 inches of chips, not 10 inches, but so I think we're going to have more than enough chips. I wish we could get rid of it, but unfortunately the way this is set up, we can't move the material off the site with the permits that we're getting.
Other questions from, I'm sorry, Len, go ahead.
For the equipment here, will that stage in the meadows of Quarry Park?
The equipment is actually going to be, probably the largest piece of equipment will be a small excavator. Nothing bigger than, say, a Cat 315, which would be probably the main part of the excavator would be about the size of a large pickup truck, and then the boom coming off of that. They're going to be kept moving around as they go through the project. We have not worked out actual staging areas yet, but that's part of the layout.
In the map, you showed the fairly extensive trail network that exists, and some are large logging roads and others are smaller. Of the trails that were on that map, do you know the approximate percent of trails that will be affected? Sorry.
I would have to come back with that number. What we did is we picked the larger trails, the ones that are accessible by the fire engines, and those are the ones that we wanted to concentrate on first. And one of our main priorities to return the access in there. That's one of the main reasons that the departments have been able to keep these fires small, is that they can get fairly close to the fire and immediately suppress it. It's when we can't get into it and it gets a chance to build that these fires can get big, or if we get a wind event. And so access by heavy equipment is really what we've been looking for. And that's why we haven't gone onto the small single track trails.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And just to follow up from Len, because there's been some community question about this, there's no plan to quote-unquote reopen some of the old abandoned logging roads in this project.
Well, we'll be clearing them off and making so those logging roads can have a fire engine drive on them, so I couldn't say no to that.
Okay, so specifically, there's half a dozen mostly slope parallel trails in there that are way overgrown, mostly falling apart.
If you're talking about the trails that go cross-country or straight up the hill?
These are more or less parallel with contour.
Okay.
They're old logging roads.
And those are the ones that we're looking at opening up as part of the shaded field road.
Okay, so the ones you've got, sorry to keep going on this, but the ones you've got marked here are all quote-unquote real dirt roads. They're open today.
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying you may open some of the ones that are long abandoned.
Those are the main roads that, when they harvested back in the 80s, were used for putting log trucks and chip trucks on. There are additional roads that were just used for bulldozers. We're not looking at reopening them. They call those skid trails.
Those are the ones I'm talking about.
Okay, no, we're not interested in reopening those in
Thank you.
this project.
Any other questions for Rich? Come up to the microphone if you would, please. No, we need you to come up because it won't be captured on the video.
It looks like most of the cutting that's going on is on existing trails are those trails accessible to your equipment?
Those are the ones, that's why we picked those.
The ones that are showing there are all you can use equipment on?
Yes, there are some on the perimeter, especially on the south perimeter, there are some fuel breaks that we want to put in above or below homes. Those don't have roads on them now, and we're just working those for defensible space.
And I noticed once you get to the south side, or the east side of where the trails are, there's really no access, right, all the way down to Correo del Medio.
And, right.
And in the worst condition, we got low humidity and wind coming from that direction is the most probable scenario for a disaster. What do you do if something starts along that area and comes across?
Okay, so the wind events that we're afraid of would be a north wind event, something coming out of, say, basically off of Northwood, coming on down across, and coming out of G-Generate and then down to the stand and then down into the residential area. The arroyo along that side where you see that one strip of yellow where there are no roads, that's not eucalyptus, that's all native chaparral. And while it's very steep and there are no roads on it, we're more concerned about something getting into the eucalyptus stand, say up above Vermont Highlands, and get established.
And just the last would be, the more probable thing is the fire coming from the north, but the more destructive fire would be the one that's coming from the east, because that would be the Santana type thing, where it's got low humidity and high temperature.
For us, those are actually north winds. Those are historically, that's what we've been finding in this unit. North winds are our worst. Those are when we have our large fire.
Okay. Is there someplace we can go look at the details of all this?
There is, the project descriptions are online. I don't have the URL, it's about 50 characters long. But if you go to the California Natural Resources Agency website, there are links down to the governor's projects. And this will be one of 35.
Right, thank you.
Can you forward those links to us and we can post them?
I will do so. Great.
Any other questions for Rich? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm back. So also, the Parks Department will be posting updates and notices and advisories regarding this project on our website, as well as social media accounts, and we'll have a page dedicated to what the project is, the timing, the schedule, everything else. So we will also be, in addition to CAL FIRE, Parks will be working to get the word out and make sure that everyone's aware of this. We don't want people getting caught off guard by this project.
One follow-on question to that. I assume substantial parts of the park will be closed while this is in progress. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're still working on a plan for that, but we will be making sure that public safety is obviously top priority, and the type of equipment Rich is talking about is large, and if you're not careful, it can be very dangerous. So we'll be making sure that that's top priority. So. Now back to parks, some of the other updates with regards to projects in the area. First is Green Valley Trail. So this is a project that has been in conversation for a long time, and county received funding from the Coastal Conservancy to prepare the plans, designs, permits, and as we got to the end of that process, the requirements and the restrictions that were put on us as, at that time, the lead agency were too onerous for us to be able to proceed with. We did not have the resources to satisfy the requirements that were being put on us at that time, and we felt that with some of these other projects that I'll be discussing on the next slide, we needed to put our available resources into those. And so at this time, that project has been put on hold, and with no date to be brought back. But we have reached out to several agencies and informed them that if they're interested in proceeding with this project, we are happy to provide all the work that we've done to date, designs, plans, permits, everything. Given that this project is actually on state land and is really a requirement on the state, we reached out to many state agencies to see if any were interested, and at this time we haven't gotten any commitments from anyone. But that's obviously an important project, and so we understand that, and so we'll keep reaching out to people and make sure that we inform everyone if anything changes on that. The next project, Fitzgerald Marine Reserve's 50th anniversary. I'm guessing you're probably going to talk about that?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything about it then. I'm just going to keep everyone in suspense until the next agenda item. So
I actually had a couple questions on that maybe you can answer better than the Friends, which is traffic control for that. Mm-hmm. What are the plans?
Yeah, I believe the plans, an advisory has been sent out to residents in the area, and the Parks Department is working with the Sheriff's Office to make sure that vehicular access is obviously going to be rerouted during the event for safety reasons, and that has all been worked out and notifications have been sent out.
There's also parking, they're going to encourage parking at the Mormon Church on the corner there, and there'll be a shuttle actually to take people.
So they've already actually, County and Parks, I guess, have already put up sandwich boards at Beach in Nevada, that the event's coming up and that where down on Main Street it's going to be closed. So they're already putting up notices.
Yeah.
So that's already out.
Yeah, we've been, and I think the first advisory went out several weeks ago. So we've been making sure that we're notifying individuals, multiple times so that it doesn't get missed.
Okay. And do you know how many of the 600 slots are signed up for?
Let me look into that and get back to you on that.
Thanks.
On that. But that's all I have on this slide. So now this slide is focused really on the San Mateo County Park system, so system-wide. And on the slide we have 8 really critical projects to us as a department, and they're all in various phases. Sanchez Adobe is the Sanchez Adobe improvement project is the installation of a prefabricated visitor center that is at the Sanchez Adobe in Pacifica. And I was fortunate. I grew up in this area, and I remember going there as a kid. And so I think it's really great to see the department and the San Mateo County Historical Association partnering to make sure that the Historical Association and the department are able to continue to provide this really great educational experience for children And so that is expected to, we're supposed to be beginning construction on that later this month, and that should go for a couple weeks. But the goal is to have that open and ready by the end of October, specifically October 26th, which is the Heritage Day, focused on the Ohlone Native American tribe. So that's our target date to make sure everything's in and operational, and we're really excited about that opportunity. Memorial Park, which is down south, is approaching its 100th anniversary. So Memorial Park is the county's first park, and it's in need of some improvements. More specifically, we will be constructing a new wastewater treatment plant, as well as replacing several restroom and shower room buildings, which if any of you have camped down there, you'll understand the condition it's in. We'll also be replacing the antiquated collection system and repaving many of the parking lots and drive aisles there. So we are really putting a lot of resources into Memorial before its 100th anniversary, and they're really needed improvements. And with them, there'll come an opportunity to not just provide better visitor experiences, but also be more efficient and conscientious of how we use resources, water and electricity, and make sure that we're continuing to energize people and make people excited about things like camping. And that's really what we're here to do, so we're really excited about that. Tunitas Creek Beach is really a huge project for the department. For individuals who are not aware, Tunitas Creek Beach is about 12 miles south of here. And this is a property that has been held by, it's currently owned by Post. It was privately held prior to 2017, and it became a popular location for nighttime activities, including raves, bonfires, night camping, poaching, the list goes on. And but Post purchased it in 2017, and the department's been managing it ever since, and we've seen a steep decrease in all of these activities. We've seen the habitat really bounce back, and we even have snowy plovers coming back at that beach. So really excited about that. Where we're at right now is actually next Tuesday, May 14th, the department will be giving a presentation to the Board of Supervisors. The Coastal Conservancy, with support from the state legislature, has awarded the county $6.2 million, a portion of which is to go to the acquisition and a portion of which is to go to the planning, permits, design efforts for visitor serving improvements. And so with that comes a whole other element of community engagement and making sure we understand the right programming for it. For us, this is really our first recreational beach that we'll be managing, and so we're putting a lot of thought and effort into this for that reason. Flood Park, kind of like Tunitas, where we're starting from scratch. Flood Park, we're going to be tearing everything out and rebuilding an entire new park. And this is a great project. It serves some underserved communities on the bay side, and it's a 25-acre park that is in need of major repairs. So we'll be adding a mixed-use lacrosse soccer field. We'll be redoing the baseball field, adding playgrounds, community gardens, everything. It's been in process for several years now, and right now we're just finalizing the environmental document. Once finalized, we'll take that to the board, release an RFP for design services, and we'll kick off the design process, which should take about a year, at which point we will start the construction of that. Really a great project, and something that serves really a diverse group of users. We're very excited about that project. Eastern Promenade is Coyote Point, and that's a project that involves new shoreline, as well as parking area, restrooms, shoreline protection, and that project was put on hold for a while, and we're in the process of bringing that back. Very excited about that. I realize we're running out of time, so I know you received an update on the Moss Beach Playground not too long ago from Scott Lombardi, so I'll leave that at that. Ohlone Portola Trail is one that will be going to the board later this summer to adopt the feasibility study, and at which point we'll be looking to install some interpretive panels, one at Pillar Point Bluff and one at Sanchez Adobe. And Old Hall Road is geared towards reducing sedimentation of Pescadero Creek. So all really important projects, take a lot of resources and time and detail to get them right, but all geared towards serving the public and making sure that we provide the highest quality experience to all of our visitors. So with that said, I believe that's it. I encourage everyone to go to the Parks Department website. We post notifications, advisories. We have a lot of information about our projects and our parks there. We also post information that's presented to the Parks Commission. I know Neil is here, and we provide really important information every other month that will keep everyone up to date. Next meeting is going to be in June. And so with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions, if there are.
Questions from the council? Of the community? Thank you.
My name's Chris Lannon. I'm a resident of Moss Beach, and I just wanted to speak to the council directly about my concerns about San Mateo County Parks and the lack of a full-time director for over the last year. Nick was highlighting that there are 8 projects on the docket for San Mateo County Parks, including the development of the master plan for Quarry Park. And we haven't had a director, let alone anybody in the top 3 positions at county parks with a parks background. We don't have a parks professional in any of the top 3 positions at San Mateo County Parks. I've had several conversations with Nick and Peggy about filling this position, and was told that it was going to be posted last year, and they punted to this year. And now I'm hearing that they're going to fill it from within. They're not even going to create an open process. They're not going to recruit. They're going to find somebody from inside the department. And as I mentioned, and I want to stress to you, there are very few, if any, parks professionals in the department with these projects on the docket. Of great concern to me is the Quarry Park Master Plan. I have been having conversations with parks, like I said, for over the last 2 years about the master plan for Fitzgerald Marine Reserve. And I was told by the previous parks director that was there for less than a year that they didn't put a lot of credence in that document at all. They just cherry-picked that document for whatever uses they want. They want to build a road, they pick the part of the master plan that says that they can build a road, but when it comes to natural resource protection, they pay that document no mind. So I just would ask, please, that you stay engaged with parks on this issue, and really, I'm begging you, please ask them to open up this position and fill it with a parks professional.
As I mentioned at the start, Peggy Jensen indicated she would be coming back to talk to that issue at a meeting in the next meeting or 2.
That'd be great. Thanks, Lynn. Thank you for your time.
I have an additional speaker slip from Ed Lorenas on that same topic. Do you want to wait? I would suggest that you wait until Peggy's here to pursue that unless there's something you want to add.
I'd like to just...
You want, go ahead.
So I'd also like to point out this, kind of the same thing, but maybe I'll add a few things to this. First of all, the projects that County Parks is doing are great projects, and I wish you the best, because you are struggling without true leadership in county, in parks management, professional parks management. It's super important. I can give you numerous examples of just even simple things like, I'll give you one. County parks at Fitzgerald and the Darnell Trail. They had Park Foundation place native plants with the flags that delineate where the native plants are. And then a few months later, for reasons unknown to anyone that I've spoken to, a crew came through to clear the vegetation near the what I call road. It used to be a trail, it's now a road. And went and just destroyed all the native plants that they had planted. And so this is just an example of leadership from above that's just not there. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mary?
So I was going to be ready to speak to what Peggy was going to talk about. So I will bring my comment about a 5-year phased chainsaw massacre for next time. So regarding the FMR master plan, I want to also state that I was at a meeting when a very high-level director, not Nicholas, not Peggy, said that regarding the FMR master plan, it was merely used as suggestions. They were not guidelines. They were not to inform how Parks was to do anything. They were just suggestions. And this particular person, higher level person, who is still at Parks, is still sort of treating the master plan as suggestions. So I hope that does not happen at Quarry Park. So regarding fire suppression, I know that this comment I was going to hold, but I'll just read it here. San Mateo County, no smoking within county parks, beaches, trails ordinance. There's actually a code in San Mateo County that says 4.96.040 that prohibiting smoking within any area, including public parking areas, county-owned maintained beaches, parks, and trails. So, what parks are covered by this ordinance? Fitzgerald Marine Reserve. What Fitzgerald Marine Reserve has done is they've placed one of those little cigarette posts that you can put your cigarette butt in. It's dark green. It's not easily seen. And I think I've already told several people within a few week period of time, I collected over 6,000 cigarette butts around Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, the Dardanelle Trail, and the Coastal Trail. I haven't seen that many lately, but I can tell you I still find cigarette butts in the parking lot, on the Dardanelle Trail, and down on the beaches. So, can I smoke in my car? No. Can I smoke in any building or structure in a county park? No. Can I smoke in my motorhome at a park? No. What do I need to do if I'm visiting one of the county parks and I want to smoke? You will need to leave the park to smoke. What is the fine or violation for smoking in a county park? The first violation is 100, second 200, third 500. Why does this smoking ban apply to? Or who does the smoking ban apply to? The no smoking ordinance applies to all persons who are at a county park or county trail or beach or in a park area managed by the county. So I read that almost 1/3 of all fires start because of cigarette smoke. Wildfires start because of cigarette butts. So I'm going to ask the MCC to please send a letter to county parks to get them to follow.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else? Thank you, Nick and Rich.
Thank you.
Next item is a presentation from the Friends of the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve regarding their 50th anniversary. Karen, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Karen Kellnuck. I'm substituting for Steve Slomka, who is the president of the Friends of Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, because he at the last moment got offered tickets to Hamilton and couldn't pass it up. And I just seen it 2 weeks earlier, so and I feel like I'm in the room where it happens, right? So there we go. So I'm glad to see several of my colleagues. I've been a docent and volunteer naturalist at the reserve for, I'm in my 5th year now, and I'm a 23-year resident of Moss Beach. It's the first time I've come to one of these meetings. So I'm going to keep this a bit lighter than some of our very serious issues that I'm so glad to have heard people are concerned about. So how many of you have been to the Marine Reserve in the last month? Oh, awesome, last year. Yay! Has anybody never been there? It's okay, you could have just moved here. Okay. Well, it is a really, really great place and it has a long history. We're really excited about the 50th anniversary and many organizations coming together to this Saturday actually celebrate the place, educate people on all the great projects that are going on there. It has great protection from both the county, state, and federal level, and to tell you a little bit about the history. So I'm just going to briefly tell you about the history and some of the projects going on. So we know that Ohlone peoples, particularly the Chiguan, populated the area from at least 3000 BC, and perhaps even longer than that. Seems like we're learning more all the time about who were the early human settlers. Of course, then in 1769, Gaspar de Portola discovered San Francisco Bay, and rapidly there started to be the Spanish missions and presidios, and they basically took over the land from the Ohlone peoples at that time. And I should mention, I've recently learned that Ohlone is actually just a big catchphrase that was taken from the Spanish for probably 40 to 50 different tribes in kind of the San Francisco Bay Area down here. And there are probably 4 to 7 different languages spoken at that time. But things really changed at that point because the natives had been stewards of the land. They really knew what stewarding meant. They ate off the land. They used everything, the plants and the animals for everything they needed. But they took just what they needed. They didn't not touch things. They did cultivate some areas, but they always kept things in balance. Okay, so after the Spanish missions came, then Mexico got its independence from Spain. So there was a great Mexican influence, and a lot of the land in here was turned into large ranchos. Then after California became part of the United States, we had the gold rush, and other immigrants and the people from the gold rush basically took over the Mexican lands over the coastline. The first real building right on the coastline we know of was, especially at the Marine Reserve, was done in the late 1880s by Jurgen Wenke. You might remember Wenke Way. And by the way, any of my colleagues, if I say something wrong or forget something important, please pipe up. And he was a bit of a speculator because there was supposed to be this great new railroad that was going to come down from the city. And this is a beautiful site. And he had this vision of this grand spa there. And it was just going to be this really happening place. And he did make a spa there. And the thing with the railroad never quite petered out. It never kept going as well as it could. And the hotel burned down in 1911. And at the same time, there was a little restaurant that was a nice restaurant right on the beach, and that one was kind of made to fail because it was just where all the giant waves came up and that kind of thing. So it's a little bit ill thought, some of these ventures, to say the least. But in the next sort of 40 years or so, the land changed hands a couple of times. There are still remnants of some private homes that are up there on the blocks. If you walk around, you can see some remnants of that. And there started to be more development locally in the area. In 1908 to 1920, we had the Ocean Shore Railroad that was bringing some tourists to it, but ultimately the railroad didn't bring enough tourism to sustain what was going on there. Because people are starting to get into automobiles, and automobiles were much easier to be done. So, let's see. So, things just went on and on. After the Reefs restaurant collapsed, and I know this is terrible because you can't see in these images from there, but a Reefs 2 restaurant was made, and hotel that the building still exists on the corner of Nevada and Beach Street. And I remember living here, and it still had the big abalone shells in Reefs 2 on the side. It must be about 10 years ago. It was sold and changed hands, and all that's gone, but the house is still there. The reserve from the early times was used actually for research, and students would come from UC Berkeley in particular and actually stay at this Reefs 2 place. They would sleep on the floor, and then they'd go out into the tide pools and study them all day long. So it wasn't until about 1969 there was advocacy, and finally at that time, especially through Supervisor James V. Fitzgerald, that the land was turned into a reserve by the county. So this instantaneously changed things on the property. To that time, people would just go out, like people that had the restaurants, and in half an hour they would have enough abalone for like a massive dinner, like just done everywhere. And I don't know if you've been at the Marine Reserve lately. It's kind of unusual to find a live abalone. We do find shells, but we don't see so many. So in the first year of it being a reserve, which meant there was no collecting, there was not even supposed to be any touching and no collecting of anything, not even shells, certainly living things, but there were over 700 citations given for actual people collecting things. So it took a while for folks to get used to things that were changing. Yeah, so since that time, there have been other acts that have helped protect the Marine Reserve. The California State Marine Protected Areas Act came in 1999, and so the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve is part of that. And its goal is to protect the diversity and integrity of the marine ecosystem. And it's also a part of the Greater Fair Lawns National Marine Sanctuary, and that's from 1992, and that is a subsidiary of NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So all these organizations sort of oversee different bits and pieces. Lots of them do research into both the water portion, what lives in the oceans, as well as what's in the tide pools, what's on the bluffs. So we have a lot of robust databases about what's going on there. So we're really excited about the 50th anniversary, and I just want to let you know about some things that are happening there. Something that's not specifically on the schedule, but it is a really relatively good low tide on Saturday. It's -0.5 tide, and it's at 10:45 in the morning. So there'll be a number of us who are out in the tide pool, so we'll be glad to give you a private tour. Come ask all your questions. That would be awesome. From 10 o'clock on, there's going to be a whole variety of booths with lots of information. So it's all of our stakeholders, including the California Academy of Sciences, and they're really good about doing some programs that actually monitor some of the organisms and do bio-blitzes. In particular, they do newborn count 4 times a year, which is huge fun. We're going to have California Fish and Wildlife, the California State Parks will be here, California Whale Rescue, Fitzgerald Marine Reserve Seal Sitters, a special subset of docents who make sure that the seals are not bothered and help educate visitors about the seals. We have, of course, the Friends of Fitzgerald Marine Reserve. NOAA, as I mentioned, which also does Beach Watch, is one of the citizen science activities that you too can get involved in. And they actually have a core of citizens who are trained, and you're actually trying to be early identifiers of potential problems. Like, is there an oil spill? Is there a chemical spill? Is there, something washed up that's maybe not a good thing? So really, there's a great alert system. That's a great citizen science project. They also run the Limpets program, which is a program specifically for generally high school students that go out and do the actual research in tide pools, rocky tide pool areas where they actually use quadret studies and transects to actually monitor periodically. It's the same group of students that will go frequently, so they have really robust databases about some of the organisms in these areas. We also have the Pacific Beach Coalition, which often does beach cleanup and habitat restoration, Peninsula Open Space Trust, San Mateo County Harbor District, San Mateo County Parks Foundation, Shark Steward, Surf Rider, and the Marine Mammal Center. So we encourage you to come and bring your children, bring your grandchildren, bring your cousins, bring your neighbors, bring someone you don't even know to come on, because what I found very distressing, I just learned recently, is that I believe the county and data are predicting that within 10 years, the tide pools may not be anymore. They may be submerged underwater. Which, when you think about it, it's very flat there, and as opposed to really highly angled tide pools, but I wasn't thinking it could be as little as 10 years. So I'm hoping they're wrong. Remember, these are all models, climate models and predictions, and we can't think of everything all the time, but it is incredibly sad and distressing to think that this might be the last time that people could enjoy these topics over here. So, wait, I encourage you all to come. It's from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. There's going to be food, there's going to be things for the kids to do, lots more of these sorts of informational displays, and it should be a good time. I think it's supposed to be good weather too, so. Any questions? Anybody? Okay. And you can park at the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, and there'll be a shuttle. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, Karen.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item. I'll let people leave. Want to? This is regarding a proposed development in Moss Beach, and the purpose of this letter is not to discuss the development itself, but to make a request that we hold a pre-application hearing on this project before it's actually applied for. So just give you a little bit of background. This is an 8-unit apartment project with 2 buildings on the corner of Etheldor, California. It's behind the small office building complex that faces Carlos Street. Just to refresh your memory, the general format of a pre-app workshop is that the people who are developing, whether it's the planner or the developer themselves, come in, give us an idea of what the project is going to be like. The public has a chance to express any concerns they may have, and then there's an opportunity for the developer or the planner to change the plans prior to it actually being applied for. And we've done this before we've done it for Velamar Bluffs. I guess the county has actually held pre-app workshops for Cypress Point and for the proposed Montera Motel. The reason we're asking for this, that we are able to hold a pre-app workshop, is partially because this is being built on an old PUD, planned unit development, that predates the local coastal plan. So it's really quite antiquated. And because of that, we're feeling that we should take a second look at it and ask for an actual hearing, not just a staff report. So I don't know if Lisa, if you want to say anything more about that? No? Okay. So what we're asking is that the letter requesting a pre-application workshop hosted by the MCC be scheduled prior to any application actually being put in for this project. Any questions from the council? Any comments from the council?
I think it's a good idea.
Good idea, I'd like them to hold it in here, or...
We're asking them to do that. Yeah.
Good idea.
Okay. Should we go ahead and vote on it then? It sounds like we have no... Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, it was speaker slip.
Yeah.
Greg.
At the risk of showing my age, I want to say right on. But there's a bigger yet more subtle issue that underpins this, the reapplication for the Cypress Point development by Mid-Penn, and Harvey, you might want to, if you're not already aware, listen to this. About a month ago, Beverly Marshall spoke at the Montero Water and Sewer District, and in the course of the discussion came out that there were a couple of extreme wet weather events in the last year or so, which alert SAM operators noticed the Sewer Authority Midcoast, turned off the flow from the north through the intertie pipe system, allowed 100% of the sewage from Half Moon Bay to occupy the treatment plant, and backed up the 5 miles of pipes to expansion tanks at Portola and in Montero, holding a sewer overflow that would have dwarfed the one that we paid the fine for. So we're already over capacity in a way, but on the other hand, that's the reason that sewer system was designed the way it was. My concern, and it should be the concern of the entire community, is what is the sewer load now? And adding another 8 buildings plus a bunch of potentially undocumented second units, which anecdotally I hear from people are being developed all over, plus a restaurant, plus a Mid-Penn with, what they say in their new applications, 148 units authorized, could be a significant problem. And instead of having to spill in Half Moon Bay, we might have it up here because we're backed up at those periods of peak flow. So I encourage you to hold these hearings to see if you can get a hearing on the Mid-Penn re-app or the Cypress Point re-app, and let's keep our eye on the sewer load because it costs money when you overflow. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
I also very much encourage this letter, as is. I think it's just fine. And I hope that you will, no matter what they decide, force the issue to have have these preliminary design hearings and so forth. We're seeing a lot of the weaknesses in our local zoning and so forth when these projects come up. And although Greg just mentioned the associated Cypress development, which is being treated in the reapplication like it will come in and almost nothing else will grow, you know, and so they're treating all the intersections and so forth like that, and that'll be a subject for a comment at another time. But the cumulative effects of these things, you know, what could happen, and what could happen with the variances the county has frequently given and so forth, are never taken into consideration. And if this is going to be 8 units, just think, that's going to be at least another 24 to 36 car trips a day, going right down into our problem intersection there at California and Highway 1, where already they're suggesting putting a plug in the highway with a light or a roundabout because of the Cypress Point project. This is just going to add to that. The cumulative effects of that, plus a number of other large homes being built in Moss Beach at this time and so forth, have got to be taken into consideration. So that's why I hope you will force this hearing so some of these problems can be voiced.
As I understand it, even if they don't grant a pre-app workshop, they will send us a referral when it is applied for, and we can address it then. But we're hoping to get it pre-app.
By that time, as we see with the Cypress Point thing,
Things have gone down.
They've had numerous consultations with county planners and so forth, got their ducks lined up, so forth and so on, and there's almost no stopping it by the time the public has a chance to say anything.
So we're hoping for this.
Yeah.
I have a slip from Marcia. We're actually not discussing the specifics of the plan tonight, just asking for the application hearing, pre-application hearing. Do you still want to talk about it?
I just want to say something about the Marcia Yates Moss Beach. I'm just wanting to say something about the height. I mean, I know you were just talking about the pre-application and getting it, but we just have to consider sustainable construction and parking and things within the Moss Beach. And if this happens, and I don't say we can't have construction and development, because that's, you know, it's going to happen. But we also have to make it sure that it's not just like dumping big buildings on little square lots. And that's just why I want to make sure that we get this letter going, and hopefully that will approve and have public comment for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Is there a timeline?
What?
What's the timeline for the project?
I don't think there is one at this point.
They've just started the process. The property was sold, what, 6-8 months ago?
Since there's no application, there's no official timeline, but we're trying to get ahead of it.
So relative to a review like this, so we've had speakers who have raised issues about, well, infrastructure, traffic, water, sewer. Do those come into play in this type of review, or is this primarily about the design of the structure? Is it constrained to that consideration?
I would think it would not be constrained, but maybe. Both Chris and Lisa are here.
You haven't seen the plans. We don't know how tall the buildings are. It could still be in flux. On the permit site, there is a parcel tag and a bunch of italics conversations with the applicant, Ed Love, as to about this. But basically, the point now, since we really know nothing about it, all we know is the potential that zoning could accommodate, and we want, and the idea is to ask for as public a process as possible, and at that time, the conversation could happen, but we don't know any of those details.
Chris?
Yeah, can I add something to that as well? Per Len's question about would those things be addressed?
No, not specifically. However, to the value, and I've seen many of these pre-application hearings now, some of which projects have never actually had a application started yet with the RV park. The value is for people like Greg and Marcia to come and make their statements about the cumulative, and Carl, make their statements about the cumulative impact, about their concerns about the sewer. And the value of these meetings is that, in my experience, the applicant is in a situation where they are actually listening right now. The application hasn't started, there's like nothing that's been committed to, and it gives them a chance to really consider the pulse of the community. And I have seen a lot of good things come out of these pre-application hearings based on people's comments about specific things, because you can see the developers' kind of wheels turning about whether they want to fight this battle, or they hadn't thought of that, or this is something that they can see might be a problem for this project moving forward. So not specifically, but it's a valuable exercise in getting that information, at least in the consciousness.
Any other comments from the council before we vote on this? Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the letter as written.
I'll second.
All in favor? 6-0. Hey, good. Moving on to the last item. This is actually a two-part item, both regarding letters regarding the recent considerations about emergency services and related items. Just to introduce the first letter, this is the letter that Michelle and Len and I put together in response to the last few meetings. We tried to keep it pretty broad, not going into exactly like what time did what certain thing happen, but just the concerns that we had coming out of everything we heard, the things that we wanted the agencies to pay particular attention to and to get back to us on. So I'm open to any comments or questions that the council may have. Yeah. So first the council.
Well, since I said the last one was soft, I like this letter. I think it's a good letter, and I think it addresses the concerns that we have, and so I like it.
Good. Greg, you had a comment?
Yeah, on the letter to Horsley, I guess I fall in the Dan Haggerty camp. I would like to see a little more outrage about a $500 million tunnel that got closed and emergency responders couldn't get through. I would suggest the following, that you have a statement about a general problem and then the solution. You've listed a bunch of solutions. So I would remind them what the problem was and then say the solution. I would also point out that there's a need for a no cell and no power solution to the tunnel. That's not stated in the letter. And some emergency transit. Now, I know you don't want to go into details, but I think you have to remind them what the problem was and then state the solution. And then finally, I would like to see a process where you ask for the assignment from each agency of who is going to solve this problem, who's going to communicate the solution, how we're going to audit the solution, and then how we can see it at work and test it. So I would like to put that on their plate. Now, did that all go to Horsley? I don't know.
Well, this is to Horsley, Caltrans, and the CHP.
Okay, well then I think it's appropriate to try and put each agency on the spot. Who owns it? Who's going to communicate to us? When are we going to be able to see it done? How are we going to test it?
You may notice in the letter that there are agencies assigned to.
I saw that.
Yeah.
But
You're making
I was strengthening this time.
So, in terms of your question, when you say to us, are you indicating you'd like to see it written as, please respond to us, the MCC? And the point I want to bring up is there was a large forum held, as you know, going up to Cherry Hill, people doing there. And that was, in terms of the level brought out in the meeting itself, it was higher level than even what they shared with us in the meetings here where we had some of those people. But the dilemma in terms of how to respond is, we have here the mayor of Half Moon Bay expressed interest and concern about this. and all the others. So in terms of framing our letter, we're looking for those kinds of things out of the process, but I'm not quite sure how to make the response as you get down to particulars, especially because some of those are just unfolding now.
I do think you should request a response to you. Now, whether Harv also wants to request a response to Halfmoon Bay in another letter, I don't know. But they've got to be answerable to somebody in writing.
You know, one of the things that, I don't know how informal we're going to do this, but at the Jerry Hill meeting, he made a commitment that he was going to hold their feet to the fire in terms of getting answers. If he's actually going to do that, I think it's probably most appropriate for him to hold the feet to the fire rather than us. But we do intend to follow up with all of these people. But I don't want them feeling like they have to respond directly in detail to several different groups. I would like to see that response process coordinated as well.
Do you have any comments to make to that, Harvey, representing a separate city?
It all depends on whether you believe Jerry Hill, and I do, okay? I mean, he's the one who instigated a lot of these agencies in getting them with the people who actually can make decisions. And he claims, and I take him at his word, that within a month, he is going to work from his office, local office in San Mateo, to actually extract commitments from the various agencies. So I like the guy, I trust him, and if in a month he hasn't in fact got commitments from these people, then I will get the Half Moon Bay City Council on board, but I don't think it will be necessary because he has the clout and the two other assemblymen. I think that the Caltrans, CHP, PG&E, Comcast, AT&T, we're meeting with AT&T, by the way, May 15th, that those agencies are not going to want to undergo what Jerry Hill is capable of doing, vis-a-vis, for example, what PG&E has got from him. So that's where I'm coming from.
In also jumping ahead as a preview to the next part of this agenda item, there is a joint letter from MCC and Half Moon Bay proposed directly to Jerry Hill and to the assemblyman, among other things, expressing our expectation that he will be following up with these agencies. And we're setting the stage so that we can step in and provide more pressure if we need to, but we're at this point telling Jerry Hill and the assemblyman that we do expect them to do this. Heather?
Go ahead.
Come back.
Good evening. My name is Heather Peters. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Coastside Emergency Corps. I wanted to thank the council for all their hard work on emergency preparedness. Thank the mayor for his leadership on this issue. He was quite modest about the victory at the fire board the other night. He spoke eloquently in favor of the board sponsoring CERT, and as a CERT member himself, was I think very influential in getting that decision made. Also want to thank the City of Half Moon Bay for last weekend having the Emergency Preparedness Fair. The Coastside Emergency Corps signed up an additional 51 new volunteers there, including, and as I mentioned last time I was here, we have not only the CERT branches that go from Half Moon Bay to the tunnels, we also have a disaster airlift response team. We work with the Peninsula Humane Society. We have a large animal evacuation group. We are reconstituting our volunteer medical corps. And we have ham radio, thank you. So we are the umbrella organization to try and coordinate all the volunteer organizations together. And right now is an opportunity that we haven't seen in a long time. So thank you for taking this letter
I brought with me a handout of a suggested one bullet point to add to the letter. And this comes from the fact that the Coastside Emergency Corps had originated within the Office of Emergency Services at the Sheriff's Office some years ago. At the time, it was led by a gentleman who provided really strong leadership and actually won an award for his creation of this Coastside Emergency Corps. Some of the examples of the work they were able to do is the Sheriff's Department at that time issued these background checked ID cards to the volunteers of the Emergency Corps. They have our photo, they have all the logos from the local law enforcement, holograms, and they say on the back what we're certified to do. So in the event of an emergency, we would be able to show up, the very select few of us who have been trained to operate the Emergency Operations Center in Half Moon Bay. Many of the city staff are not located on the coast. They don't live here. So in the event of an emergency and off hours, we would be able to show up and say, we're who we say we are, we're trained, we can help. This is no longer happening. There's been staff turnover at OES, there's been staff turnover at the city, not through anyone's fault, not pointing any fingers, it's just the nature of the beast in public service. So the paragraph that I would like to add is adding to your list of concerns that should receive priority attention would be a need for coordination with the CEC to establish official training, activation, and communications protocols to leverage hundreds of emergency volunteers on the coast, including CERT, HAM, Shelter Ops, Large NLOs, et cetera, and others. And the ask there would be that we work collaboratively with the county and the city and the fire department to create a standard operating procedure, an actual manual that will survive all of us, all the staff turnover. Because right now, although we now finally have the ability to have the fire department call out the CERT officially, all these other volunteers have no way to officially be activated. So with your assistance, we hope to do that. Supervisor Horsley and his staff have agreed to meet with us, and his law enforcement background, he very strongly supports this, so we expect strong support there, but would like to see it in your letters. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to the council. Lynn?
Is somebody else? Go ahead.
Carl, go ahead.
Just a quick comment. I just wanted to make another thing that wouldn't be added to the letter. In all of this, I'm all for all the emergency preparedness. One thing that people have not taken into consideration is a huge influx onto the coast side during disasters. Western San Francisco was almost unpopulated until the 1906 earthquake. And tens of thousands of people went out to what were then sand dunes and everything else at that time during that disaster. You can update it through other disasters. The Loma Prieta quake didn't cause enough damage over the hill for services and functions and so forth to be broken down. But I would note that on the coast side, the effects of the Loma Prieta quake were much less than over the hill. So we were probably, another point on the Richter scale or whatever the scale is these days, having an influx of people over here from them, if the roads could stand it. More recently, 2 years ago with the Sonoma fires, most of those, the fires were coming from the east or the northeast and into the housing areas in Sonoma County. There was a push of quite a number of people, I don't know if they ever quantified this, into Sebastopol, Healdsburg, not Healdsburg, but Sebastopol, Bernville, the western part of Sonoma County at that time from that disaster. So though we may have disasters right here that we need to reflect on and be prepared for, longer term, we might keep this in the backs of our minds. What happens when everybody comes to the open areas that haven't got the urban destruction from a major disaster?
Good point, Carl. Before the council actually discusses this, we need to have a motion to consider it.
I believe we adopt the letters presented both to the supervisor and to our legislature.
That's two letters.
Right.
Maybe we should consider them separately.
Okay. We'll move for the adoption of the letter to Supervisor Horsley. Is that Al?
Second.
Okay. So, discussion?
Yes. I agree that the letter can be strengthened. I think we can do better, specifically on the line, the first bullet point, commitment to provide a power source that could ensure minimal disruption. I think that's vague. I think what we want is we want to prevent disruption due to power failure. So, such as a battery generator, redundant power supply. I think that should be changed. Very clear. That's what we want. I think it's the only thing that should be requested.
Do you want to help me a little bit with the code
I'm
of
having
procedure
trouble
here?
with what you're actually asking to be different.
Okay, a commitment to provide an alternate power source that would prevent disruption of service to the tunnel due to power loss.
So you just basically want to remove the word minimal.
More than that.
Prevent. Sounds like.
Read it again.
I think that, help me out with the procedures here. I think that once you put your thought into words, you have to make a motion to amend it, correct?
Yeah, right now we're getting clarity on.
Yeah, I think we should try and clarify first before we start amending.
Right, but that's what
I was just trying to understand what Dan was actually asking for. Okay.
So, do you understand?
Yep, thanks.
Okay.
So, I want to highlight or comment on that by basically bringing up a conversation that I had with one of the battalion fire chiefs who was at both this meeting and the CERT meeting. And what he pointed out, at the end of the forum meeting, PG&E basically announced, or something that emphasized something they had said publicly several months before, that when there is a public safety power shutoff, PSPS, that they will turn off all power in the areas affected that are, so basically that covers the lines that carry power from Pacifica up to the tunnel. And what that says in effect is, if there is a PSPS, we will turn off the power. What he further emphasizes that once you have this occur, to bring the power back on, you have to inspect the lines to make sure there was no damage during that incident. So it's a fairly extended power outage. Brings up two problems. One, acute awareness of it, and furthermore, this is a kind of winds we were talking about that leads to the events of fires or feared fires in the forest here. So it's not, gee, when might this ever occur here? That's why we're getting highlighted. The question in terms of response is, unlike this particular power outage, which was the first in, the first in some time, the life of the tunnel, if you will, these winds occur basically every fall. So we have a high risk there. And then the question is, what can we do about it? The second is, when you go to make a request of the type we're stating here in an absolute sense, as they highlighted in the presentation by Caltrans, they said, look, this is an enormous power supply when we have to run the fans. Now, at this point, I got education from the battalion chief because he said, do you know what you're talking about when you say run the fans? And I thought, as I go through the tunnel, I see the fans sort of turning like this. And he said, no, that's just the wind turning the fans in effect. The only time the fans really run is either a once-a-year test where they turn them on and they blast like hell, if you will, or an actual event. And basically, they consume a lot of power. And this because when the PG&E people said that's 3 megawatts, I said, how is this? Okay, said you have to see them in operation to appreciate it. It further pointed out, though, that if you have not a humongous power supply, but one that can keep the sensors running for days and days, then all you need to have is a procedure that would require continuous monitoring to deal with a rare event that there's an emergency. So these are the kinds of things I expect our officials to go into in depth and look at it to make sure it was well understood. I sent it to our friend at Caltrans just to make sure that was in their hopper. But basically, you know, these events will occur in all likelihood or fearfully occur next fall. And so there's a question of what do we expect? And at this point, you have to expect that at the level of Jerry Hill, there'll be effective action that can digest the whole situation, not miss points like this, and bring it to an effective step forward process. So that's why when you get as specific as what you said, I think what we heard is there's really not any way in the short period of time you have that you would get that kind of power there. Do you necessarily want it? But that's the discussion going on behind the scenes. So, I mean, I think the question we have to digest is, what do we want to convey, and do we want to go too deep in a particular detail that we know more about?
So I'll just reiterate, I'm asking for requesting that they move forward towards solving the problem.
Well, that's what this letter is
Okay, but I'm
asking.
not clear on your response to the.
My response
I mean,
is
you got confusing, but what, you don't think that a generator can be built to handle I'm not clear on.
The question is, do you really want to do it? Where, you know, there's a number of issues.
Well, we don't want to get into that.
I don't want to go into that. When you get as specific as put the generator in, that's what you're looking for. It may be something different.
I don't think we're good, Wayne.
Alternate power source, whether it's upgrading the Half Moon Bay substation to bring a line from Half Moon Bay, so they have one from Pacifica, from the north, and one from the south.
Clear that can't be done.
You know, pardon?
They made it clear at the meeting, I feel that's a non-starter.
It's money.
Well,
It's money. It's upgrade, they were very clear, it's upgrading.
Anyway.
we're not trying to solve the
Substation.
problem for them. We're asking them
That's what I remember.
to look at these various options and solve it. And it sounds like this is the only sticking point in this letter, is this first bullet point. Did you want to make an amendment to this, Dan?
Yeah, I thought I did.
No?
Well, no, I mean, we said we would postpone amendments, so we all talked about it. But has everybody who wanted to speak spoken? I know Dan did, Lynn did. So I don't have anything to say myself.
So can you put that into words as to what we would like us to consider?
Okay, so essentially, I'll read it. Commitment to provide an alternate power source that would prevent disruption of service due to power loss, such as a battery, generator, or redundant power supply.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion on that?
Do we agree that that's, you know, a little bit more clear than?
Well, that's what we're going to vote on.
Well, we're still discussing.
Yeah.
Ensure minimal disruption. I mean, that's so vague, you know, and it's just wide open, vague, as what is subjective, what is minimal disruption. I think we want the goal is to prevent disruption.
What do you mean by disrupt? Never have the power?
Not having the ability to drive through the tunnel. Disruption of service of the tunnel.
Okay. And
You
so
know, I mean,
absolutely no
think about
disruption,
it.
is that what you mean? Absolutely no disruption.
Due to power loss.
Yeah.
Yes. So, you know, if there was a generator, there would be an automatic switching. As soon as power's sensed off, it would be what do they call it, an automatic transfer switch that would, in seconds, transfer the power load from the PG&E to the generator, and it would be instantaneous, essentially.
My only concern about this amendment is that I don't really know enough technically to say whether it's possible to do this instantaneous thing or not. So I would want to say that it needs to be as good as it can possibly be.
Okay, that's part of the discussion. It's not part of the, you know, the language. of the amendment. It's been well discussed. They have already said they're working on it. That's my take from the Half Moon Bay meeting. So what we're doing is we're just, what I'd like us to do is just, solidify the request to make it very clear that we do not want to have disruption of the tunnel service due to power loss.
Any further discussion on the amendment?
I just don't see how anybody can say, ever want a power failure you can't guarantee service. So, I don't mind the word minimal.
A generator would. Generators are used all over the Bay Area. There's thousands and thousands of them.
That's true, but we
connecting
had
the
wasn't it the Caltrans guy that said the coastal commissioner, whoever, wouldn't allow
At the time,
That was the
they
initial-
chose not to pursue it. They chose not to pursue it at the time.
Can I speak?
Okay.
My understanding is that Caltrans didn't go to the Coastal Commission. They just assumed that a generator would not be environmentally okay with the community. And just a couple of points. If they were going to do a diesel generator, it would be like a 40-foot semi. There is a place they could put it. It would have to be tested, I've heard once a month, once every 6 months, but it would have to be tested. When it's tested, it makes a lot of smoke and a lot of noise. I'm not saying that makes it unacceptable. But from my perspective, the thing that really is important in an emergency is two things. One is the ability that even if there is no power, that traffic can go through at least one of the bores, that they be led by a cop that can guarantee, they will be monitoring the carbon monoxide level. And the chances, when you balance risk versus benefit, it's clear to me that letting traffic through, even if there is no power, as long as there's enough, there is emergency power to monitor the CO levels, that would be okay. And then as an alternative, if, for example, the bores get shut down, then the other emergency thing is to allow traffic to use the trail, and that's also doable. And I think both of those are, alternatives that in an emergency would allow what we all care about, which is access through the tunnels.
Thank you. I think we're ready to call the question on the amendment. There's no objection.
I'd like to just respond to your comment, Harvey. It's my understanding, Caltrans is very clear that the state law will not allow anybody to use that tunnel. There's no power. So
They told us the fire
yeah.
marshal said that.
That was their stated opinion. That is not necessarily a fact.
Well, they said the state law says, sure, if laws were changed.
No, it was the state fire marshal, which is not law.
It's policy.
It's policy.
Okay, whatever. Until that's changed, So I still think that we should ask for an alternate power source that would prevent disruption, and then just let them, there's many different ways around this problem. But as it stands now, I think that's what we should be asking for, and then let them figure it out.
Okay, you have the language of the amendment?
I do. Dan proposes alternative power source that would prevent power loss, such as battery backup or generator, instead of insured minimum.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. So all in favor of the amendment? One. Okay, all opposed? Okay. 5-1. Moving on to the letter itself, I think that has been moved and seconded. All in favor of the letter as written?
Do we want to consider the one other suggestion listed?
No, because nobody's, unless somebody wants to propose it.
The motion was, with the motion that I believe you made, Len, was approve the letter as written.
Right, that just, it's okay.
If we were going to consider that, someone would have to offer it as
No,
an
I
amendment.
understand, just.
Nobody's done that? Okay. Yeah, we can,
We can.
or not. For
I think it's like, there are many things in this that involve various considerations, and I think we've hit the key things here as we get into other discussion, of meetings attended and others that will come up, but I think the letter hits the points I felt we should.
Especially the last one about need for comprehensive and well-established emergency plans. I would consider your group is definitely falling under that without calling it out specifically.
No, thank you.
Thank you, though. Okay, so ready to vote on the letter as a whole. All in favor of approving the letter as written? All opposed? 5-1. Thank you. And then moving on to the last letter. This is a letter that was written by the staff of Half Moon Bay at Harvey's and my request that we issue a joint letter to the State Assembly and State Senate people who represent us, thanking them for having the meeting that was held at the Half Moon Bay High School, and also telling them that basically what we said in this other letter, that we represent the entire coast side, not just a portion of it, and that we do expect that they will be continuing to follow up and address our issues. So I guess the first thing is we have to have a motion to consider this.
Move we consider adopting the letter to our legislatures, which is essentially the same letter 3 times, right?
Right.
Second.
Any discussion on the letter?
I just have one that's just, there's no way for any of these folks, like, to contact you. There's no emails, there's no phone number on the stationery, absolutely nothing to get a response. Is that?
Oh, and I think Jerry Hill has many ways.
Well, I'm sure he does, but it just seems like nowadays we should have at least something on here.
Well, these are normally emailed.
Oh, are they? These are emailed?
Yeah.
Even more so then. Okay.
The one question I have in sending this is whether we should consider as an attachment the letter we're sending to Don, which is more specific, just as a point of reference.
Is that what you were going to say? Because I neglected you, Greg.
Greg Gigas, Montera. I think you ought to attach as a reminder the letter you're sending to Horsley, because these people are pretty high level and they need to know what it is they're going to follow up on. I would also strengthen the language of appreciation by punctuating the potential disaster, saying something like, the closure of the tunnel and the failure of the alert system could have had catastrophic consequences coast side. And we appreciate you paying attention. Thanks.
We're a little bit limited in adapting this letter, although I suppose we could because we didn't write it.
Is that something that could be added to like the body of the email as you introduce the attachments?
That's iffy.
Like as part of the introduction, like this is what we're sending and why?
It might be covered if we did attach our letter to it, which I think is a great idea.
Yeah, but, I don't know. Harvey, it's a joint letter. What's your opinion on attaching the other letter?
I have no objection to it.
So I move we attach as an amendment, I propose an amendment to attach our letter to Don Horsley as an attachment to this letter.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
Any discussion on whether we should request that our letter be attached to this?
The attachment would have to indicate that that's from the MCC.
Yeah.
Would that be acceptable, do you think?
But I'm just saying, I don't have the authority to say that Half Moon Bay is on board with the Horsley letter, or personally. But as long as it's clear in the attachment that, by the way, the MCC is sending this letter to our supervisor.
I have an alternate proposal. Since this is all one agenda item, even though we've already voted on the other letter, we can go back and change the first letter to send to the 3 legislators in addition to Don, Caltrans, and CHP. That way, we're not changing the thank you letters, but the other letter still gets to.
That's good.
That sounds very reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like procedure in the way to do it.
Yeah, how do we do that legally here?
Since we're still on the same agenda item, because they are in the same agenda item, we can go back and revisit the previous vote.
So I'll propose an amendment that we add the names of the 3 legislatures to our letter to Don Horsley.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor of adding the 3 legislators' names to the...
One point of order, we have 2 amendments on the table.
Okay.
So when we're talking about voting on the amendments, I think Len is saying he's withdrawing his first.
Withdraw my amendment.
Right.
Okay.
There we go.
Now we have one amendment saying that, go ahead.
Well, this is an amendment to the first letter, and that we add the names of our 3 legislatures as recipients of that letter.
And do we want to blend that with we approve the second letter, or do we keep them separate?
No,
I think
let's keep them separate.
Okay.
Is Berman representing anybody in the Midcoast?
Yes,
Yeah.
he is my
Okay.
legislator.
Okay.
The dividing line is right about the airport.
Okay. Second.
Okay, so we are ready to vote on whether to send our letter to the legislators as well as to our current addressees. Okay, we have a second on that?
Second.
All in favor?
We're talking about our letter specifically, or?
Yeah, our letter.
Right now, okay, so
Yeah.
I'm fine, okay.
Okay, all in favor of sending it to all people? 5 to 1, okay. And then we move on to the joint letter with Half Moon Bay, to which we are attaching nothing. We have is this on the table already, or?
Yes.
It's already on it.
It is. Okay, so all in favor of sending this letter jointly with Half Moon Bay? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
We may be very thorough, but we get there eventually.
Well, this is the first meeting we've had that's gone anywhere near over.
Hey, it's not over yet.
That's true. So moving on to the next, which is, I've lost it here on my computer, but I think it's...
Council activity.
Council activity, okay.
Yeah, I have some, well, I already reported on conversations that came out of the CERT meeting with Fire Chief. Also, along the same vein, the Resource Conservation District got in touch with me because in a lighter vein than what the fire department or the fire district will do for Quarry Park, they're having in June an event in which they'll take a fairly major chipper and they want to run it up El Granada Boulevard and basically for free chip any of the underbrush that private citizens have there. That they're working to set it up. But this recalls for a fairly specific sort of outreach to El Granada Boulevard, the kind of thing that the organizations that you represent seem well put up to do. We can certainly publicize it, but it's a kind of thing, just like an evacuation plan itself, it needs a lot of detailed work. So I would want to reach out to you. And then conversation number 2, I guess when, in terms of keep, when I built our list from last year. Keep was not on it. And then when I went through our minutes, there was no mention of somebody assigned from Keep to it. So it's actually on the list, but it's open. But I guess sometime during the meeting, we put you on it, right? So it just escaped Dave's notice and escaped my notice, so we'll add that on. But what I want to bring up is, so the chair of that is Sharice McHugh, and she had reached out to me, I guess, on a couple of points. One is that Bill Deho was, while he was on the MCC, was the representative there, and I don't think there was another representative ever identified, so he's continued fairly regularly to attend.
Not recently.
Well, he has done some attendance, but the point Sharice wanted to make is she very much wanted someone from the MCC to come on, so we had that person, and I think as well, she's considering that person might be part of, they have an executive committee, and I don't know what that means, but that sort of does more planning, so even more work for you as an opportunity. But so, I wasn't aware, so basically, but we've set that up so we can just inform her we have a person. Did you go to the last meeting?
No, I did not.
But are you on the distribution? It's because they have it monthly and they had a fairly major one.
I haven't gotten a single thing. I just.
Well, the last month's email distribution, for some weird reason, got screwed up. Nobody got it. But prior to last month, there's been a monthly distribution. So you will.
What's her name?
Sharice
McHugh.
Yeah.
Barbara, I'll follow up in a conversation with her and just email your link to her.
Okay.
Tell her that you're already on. So have you not, then you may not have received any notices about it?
I've gotten absolutely nothing.
Okay, so, well, just as we didn't put it on our own list and didn't catch that, so that's the reason you have it. It's a monthly meeting, and so
Yeah,
I'll
I'm
connect you
happy
to
to
her and let her know. We'll get all down the road. Great. Okay.
Any other council activity, any meetings, Tamara?
Yeah, I went to the Montero Water and Sewer District meeting. So they presented on a variety of budgetary issues, but they got stalled early on because it turns out that a couple of members on the legislative board have direct ties to Sam. And so that was a concern for possible conflict, so they're going to revisit that. They also presented on the Alta Vista well monitoring, which is really interesting just to learn about the aquifer and all the impacts of the wet year cycles and dry year cycles and how it maintains. So all that information I think is posted. Yeah, so it's basically in a nutshell, the updates there.
I went with Tamar to that meeting. Tamar's now, she and I are both doing the Montero Water and Sanitation. I think it's really important for people to look at that, watch that meeting regarding that well, because we were under the impression we had an infinity amount of water in that well, and that's not the case. So we should listen, watch that if you're interested.
Anybody else?
I'm sorry, when you say that well, which well? are you
The
talking
Alta
about?
Vista well.
Yeah, I think they've been pretty clear on the flow reports for that.
It's really interesting to listen to the guy talk about it, though.
Future agendas include having Peggy Jensen here to talk about some of the things that came up tonight. There's also something coming up about reusable restaurant silverware or cutlery or whatever. There's something coming up on green infrastructure. These are things the county wants to present to us. And other ideas of things that people want to see pursued. Certainly,
Peggy said she can attend either of our next two meetings, and she would like to get that pinned down.
Yeah, we can do
So
that.
should we choose?
I don't want to do that right now. We'll do that, yeah. Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, all in favor?
So, wait, is that something you can do in the